Alonso could potentially replace Sergio Perez in that Red Bull seat.
Yes, well, it is a bit of a far-fetched rumour, but I think it could be possible in the future. I think Sergio Perez isn't performing up to the level that he needs to be in that Red Bull seat. We're seeing Fernando Alonso, well, we saw him in the beginning of the season doing relatively well in that Aston Martin car, but now throughout the rest of the season they have not upgraded it and evolved it as much as the other teams throughout the top 5, and that's why they are falling back and out of that top 5 title battle. So I think that's relatively disappointing for Fernando Alonso, and I think he's going to be hoping to get a top team to drive with. And I don't think you can ever discount him. Of course, he is a little bit older in age, but still performing at the level, or at the same level as those youngsters that are also in Formula 1. And I don't think it is too far-fetched to get him into that seat.
No, not at all in this case. Of course, as we said, it's a rumour. It's very much just pretty much probably somebody in the back there just going and saying, oh, you know what, let's have Alonso in that Red Bull car. But let's actually look at what that would mean and what that could potentially do in that Red Bull I suppose that Red Bull setup. So gpblog.com's got a little bit of an article here, and we're just going to read a little bit into it, and I suppose we'll chat about the various things that could happen with regards to it. So the rumour started on Monday after tweets from some prominent figures in F1. So it is no secret that there was tension in several different areas. The big question is which bomb will blow first. After the Mexico Grand Prix, here's the state of play on some lingering issues in the sport. The seat next to Max Verstappen, being Sergio Perez, has been under pressure at Red Bull Racing all year. We know this. First, Perez wants to compete for the world title, but now he's seemingly losing his seat with the team. In front of his home crowd, the Mexican would have scored the most important points for his season for the standings, but he threw it all away with his chances in the first corner. The Red Bulls supported him afterwards, but internally the situation will be discussed differently. This cannot go on like this. Not only is Perez simply too slow compared to Verstappen, but he is also too big a cost for the team at the moment. The 33-year-old driver has already caused a lot of damage with his crashes, which is far from ideal with the budget cap. Daniel Ricciardo did make his mark in the Mexico Grand Prix of all places by qualifying 4th ahead of Perez in the Red Bull 19. Ricciardo also drove a decent race, and although it must be said that Yuki Tsunoda came very close until his crash, Ricciardo finished off in 8th position. So he did exceptionally well, and Perez not finishing the race shows that Ricciardo really did put his name up there in terms of outperforming Perez within that Red Bull setup. Perez, though, not performing well enough for Red Bull Racing standard, but is Ricciardo the best alternative? Well, Alex Albon shows weekly at Williams that he has also grown immensely, but Helmut Marko argues that they cannot now cut the tie loose. They cannot now cut the tie loose of Williams. His team talks have also been held with Lando Norris, but he would prefer a longer stay at McLaren over a place alongside Max Verstappen. Then perhaps Carlos Sainz, an old friend of Red Bull and the ideal second driver to Charles Leclerc. However, Sainz wants to win himself and knows from experience that he'll be in trouble alongside Verstappen, so the options are limited, which brings across the big rumour mill of Fernando Alonso.
Of course, there has been a little bit of rumours going about Fernando Alonso wanting to retire with the whole Aston Martin saga. A big question mark also appears behind Fernando Alonso's name. At 42 years old, Alonso is the oldest Formula 1 driver on the grid. And where he was still so positive at the beginning of the year, while the whole Aston Martin project was still somewhat competitive, it has now collapsed. And there are some rumours going around that Lawrence Stroll could soon pull the plug on his Formula 1 project. The Guinea Group is reportedly looking to take over, and given that his son Lance Stroll's motivation has dropped away from Formula 1, Lawrence would do well to sell the lot. The team started the Formula 1 season so well, but has taken completely the wrong direction with the development of their car. This certainly will not please Stroll, with the RB18 that was copied well at the beginning of the season by Dan Fallows and his squad, but over the year it became clear that copying does still not allow you to understand those fundamentals of their design concept. The Stroll family has tried in Formula 1, first at Williams, then at Aston Martin, with mega amounts of money being put into that team, but with no success for their son Lance.
So, will Fernando Alonso rather retire, or will he move to yet another team in his Formula 1 career? With the Aston Martin saga, a big question mark also appears behind Fernando Alonso's name. At 42 years old, Alonso is the oldest F1 driver on the grid. So, will he move into that seat, you reckon, next season or not?
Well, I don't know about Red Bull. I think they are just... He's a little bit too old for them, unfortunately, in terms of signing him for a multi-year contract. Maybe they might just sign him for a year, to allow maybe Daniel Ricciardo to get a little bit more comfortable in the AlphaTauri seat and then re-evaluate after that. I think if Aston Martin isn't going to be able to provide a good enough race car for Fernando Alonso, he is going to start looking elsewhere. I think his contract still goes into next year, but they could try and do a driver swap between himself and Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez used to be in that team when it was still Force India, then becoming Racing Point, and now Aston Martin. So I think he would be welcomed back at the team by all of the engineers and personnel. But I don't know if anyone would want him back at his current form. Unfortunately, just not being able to be competitive in what could be the most dominant Formula 1 car in history of the sport.
Yeah, so I mean, Fernando Alonso not really going to be moving to Red Bull. He's quite old, and it's unlikely that he will make a move to that Red Bull seat, but it is still part of the rumour mill. Stranger things have happened, and we could very well see Sergio Perez at least out of that Red Bull seat next year. And if Sergio Perez does happen to leave Red Bull in the next coming seasons, who would you like to see in his place? Would you like to see Fernando Alonso, even though he's 42 years old, started to get towards the end of his career, one imagines eventually? Would you like to see him in that Red Bull? Would you like to see Alex Albon come back to that Red Bull car? Would Norris suit it? Would another driver completely suit it? Maybe Daniel Ricciardo be upgraded, Perez be lumped into that AlphaTauri team? All these questions will be asked, so be sure to let us know in the comments